I think you can take one look at me right now, just in this frame that you're looking at, and determine that I am a Star Wars fan. Got the hoodie, got the posters, got a Millennium Falcon rug that's on my wall, not to mention the hat and a Build-A-Bear Chewbacca that's behind me on my dresser. Yes, I'm a fan. I'm always going to be a fan. I'm never not going to be a fan, despite my feelings towards The Last Jedi, which I still think is an apparently bad movie. It's just, dear God. But that being said, when I look to the future of Star Wars, specifically this week, we have got The Mandalorian dropping tomorrow, the second episode dropping on Friday, Jedi Fallen Order coming the same day. And then in just a little over a month, we get to end the Skywalker saga with The Rise of Skywalker. Good or bad, it's going to be over, and Disney and Star Wars can look to the future, which is why I think that it's all going to be Disney Plus for that 3-year hiatus, which brings me ultimately to the topic I want to discuss here. And this is going to be a bit of a long topic, an interesting topic, and one where I am going to criticize a couple different people, and those people and their fans are probably not going to like it as much, but I feel that it's kind of relevant to the conversation at hand. So when you think about Star Wars, specifically here on YouTube, what is it you're kind of thinking about, right? You hear a lot about the Fandom Menace, which ultimately is a large collection of people and a lot of channels that have come out as more or less anti-Lucasfilm and anti-Disney Star Wars. And they think that by pounding their chest and being as angry as humanly possible on YouTube, that it's going to enact change within, well, Disney Lucasfilm and Lucas and the current batch of Star Wars products. And I hate to break it to you, it's not. So when the Den of Nerds came out with the idea for the Grey Order, I caught wind of it back in September, and it piqued my interest. Why? Because I had kind of been talking to some friends of mine who do YouTube as well about potentially coming together for a series or for a podcast that does look at Star Wars news and talk about it from more of a critical but yet still positive perspective, looking to the future, not so much rallying against the past that we can't change. Still finding a way to get excited over something that we love without just wanting to demolish it, burn it down, piss on its ashes, and make sure nothing grows there ever again. So I reached out to Josh in the Grey Order, and we had ourselves about an hour-long conversation at the end of September about this. And he sent me his information on it, and I read through the documentation, and I like what he was trying to get to. I like what he was trying to say. Then after that, conversation kind of just died off, and I haven't heard from him since then, to be fair. And I've reached out to him, and I've gotten nothing back, and I don't know if it's just cross communications or whatever. However, I was kind of shocked when his video came out where he announced the Grey Order, and he did it in a way that directly attacked the Fandom Menace. Now, despite my feelings towards the Fandom Menace, which, trust me, are not necessarily positive, I found that to be a very odd way of going about it. And the way he described his intent was ultimately to kind of play off of a PewDiePie meme, but that doesn't really apply to this. And I think it had the adverse impact that he was looking for. And of course, the Fandom Menace responded because they felt like they had been targeted and they had been attacked. Because he did say in his pitch that he wanted to make something like the Fandom Menace, but better. And the truth of the matter is, what he is saying, what he is referring to, he's 100% right on. Because what he wants is something that, if you listen to Jeremy from Geeks and Gamers of the Fandom Menace, who is, by all intents and purposes, the leader of the organization, and whatever you want to say as to the counter, it's not true. That's just simply not true. Usually, it's whoever has the loudest voice is the person who most people look to, and Jeremy's always that guy who does that. And you can try to deny it till the end of time, no one's buying it. So let's move past. But Jeremy said that he is not about trying to rebuild anything. He's not about trying to build anything back up. And it's just F Lucasfilm and F Disney and F Star Wars, all while still rocking Star Wars hoodies and buying the toys and probably playing the games and still seeing the movies. And again, it's a really kind of conflicting thing to watch. How can you sit there and say F all this stuff, but still engage in the way that you do? Just to me, I find it to be kind of funny, potentially intellectually dishonest, but we'll get to that later on. The problem with the Grey Order is how Josh went about it, because I find that to be very weird. When he came out and he said, I have talked to people about this, but nobody wanted to do it, that didn't really come across like a solid business pitch. You don't go out there and say, I'm doing this new thing. It's going to be great. It's going to be amazing. Nobody wants in on it. and use it as a way to get people to come on in. Now, I understand it from the perspective of like, you want to do it and you want to make sure other people, they know that you're not going to sit idly by. You're going to stand by your convictions. You're going to build this thing come hell or high water. But it just felt like a very odd way to go about it, unless you understand Josh as a person. And the difference between Josh and, let's say, Jeremy, is that in this particular regard, we're talking about left brain and right brain approaches. So Josh is very business oriented. Josh is very logic oriented. And the way he approaches it, especially if you listen to that debate between the two of them, he asked Jeremy, do you read or did you read the 48 Points of Power or something along those lines? He asked me the exact same question because he's extremely business oriented. There's a reason why he's got a team of people for some reason. I still can't quite figure that one out, but whatever, man, that's just a minor observation. But when you are looking at this from that perspective and you want to build a new brand and approach it from the business oriented perspective, you attacking people that operate from more of a right brain or emotional view is not going to have the impact that you want. And that will be evidenced by the comment section on this video, where you're going to see a lot of negativity. It's just kind of par for the course, and that's fine. When you look at someone like Josh and what he's trying to do, and this is something I do believe, that he's very sincere, wants to rebuild the fandom. I think he, like me, is sick and tired of the constant negativity, sick and tired of clicking on or just seeing YouTube videos that I don't watch, by the way, but just scrolling through the feed and seeing oh, it's terrible, it's bad, it's the worst ever. And it's like, really, guys? Okay, look, we've heard this argument before, and I'll give you a case in point. I tuned in last night briefly to the Midnight's Edge doing this toxic femininity stream, right? Where you had Tom and 3 women whose names I don't know, complaining about Star Wars for 2 hours. And I listened for a little bit, maybe 25 minutes or so, as I was doing other things, but there was nothing in there that was inherently new. There was no new conversation that was being had. It was the same jokes, the same insults, and the same complaints. Stuff that we've been hearing now for over 2 years, or almost 2 years. And so I really was just bored by what I was listening to. And I was like, okay, well, I've already heard this before. And there are a lot of people that do come from the Fandom Menace that have left because it's the same argument over and over and over again. It's just everything that I hate. And eventually people just get burnt out on the negativity. And so a lot of them they want to look for something different. And that's kind of where the Gray Order is coming from. And that's where I think he should have started, to be fair. I have my criticisms against the Fandom Menace and the people that are the thought leaders inside of that organization, simply because I don't view a lot of what happens as being intellectually honest. And I say that because I feel there's a lack of integrity when you complain about something and then you say, well, I just do this for money. I mean, how am I supposed to, as a viewer who trusts you and what you talk about, sit there and go, well, how can I completely take everything you say as truthful when you will admit you do this predominantly for money, that you church it up a little bit for money? It's entertainment. It's what it boils down to. But when you got people like Doomcock outright spreading fake news over this test screening for The Rise of Skywalker, which we know is not real, and him getting a couple 100,000 views and that being treated as fact as it gets spread around the web, that's all my question here is where's the integrity of the commentary that you put out there? And I think that when you base your entire business model around that, you do, as Josh says, narratively paint yourself into a corner. And that is where he and I agree when it comes to the Fandom Menace, because again, Jeremy's words here, not interested in building up anything involving the fandom, claims it's not his responsibility, which I think is a fair way of skirting responsibility for the kind of content you put out there and the type of community that you've created. If you sit there and say, well, I'm just one man, I just have one opinion, blah, 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 I don't have any responsibility. All right, fine, you want to say that, whatever. Okay, you can believe it if you want, no one else does. You say that, but then here comes somebody that's like, well, I want to build up the fandom. I want to repair the fandom. I want to find a way to talk about these things. And I think that's a better move. I do. I think that's a better move. I think the Gray Order, despite my own criticisms with how it was launched, and even Josh refusing to return DMs, which is really weird, and how I have my own issues with I think some of the things that he said. It's definitely interesting because his approach to it is more about, this is what I want to see. I want to be the change I want to see in the world, which I believe is an Eleanor Roosevelt quote, rather than just, I want to beat my chest, complain into a $75 webcam and then do nothing. See what I'm getting at here? It's like you can kind of see the both. Now, I think that the Grey Order is off to an extremely rocky, if not terrible start. And it's possible that this thing won't survive past the release of The Rise of Skywalker. And I say that because once you get to The Rise of Skywalker, it's kind of done for a while, you know? Mandalorian is going to end the week after The Rise of Skywalker. You have until February for the Clone Wars Season 7. And then there's nothing until the fall of 2020 when Mandalorian Season 2 comes out. There's no movie till 2022. There's not going to be the Cassian Andor series and the Obi-Wan series and Mando Season 3 until 2021. Star Wars is going to be going into a bit of a drought scenario. Even Star Wars Resistance is wrapping up after this season. So something like the Grey Order, in regards to what it's attempting to do right now, is capitalize on the hype of The Mandalorian, Jedi Fallen Order, and Rise of Skywalker, is doing it at a time where you're not going to have a lot there to talk about. And even the Fandom Menace, who wants to rally against Lucasfilm, is not going to have a lot to talk about. I mean, you know, granted, there's always Marvel. So, hey, you know what? When one target well runs dry, move on to another one. I'm sure Brie Larson will be in another movie soon, right? I'm pretty sure there's going to be some interviews with her that, you know, hey, 40, 50 videos because of that. Why not, right? Do what you got to do. Doesn't mean you can't be criticized for it. Just saying. So look, you can like what I have to say or not like what I have to say, and that's entirely fine. If you are a member of the Fandom Menace who is personally aggrieved with what I have to say here, and my criticism is levied at the entire thing, by all means, come on my show. I do Hollywood After Dark. I talk about a lot of different stuff. I answer questions from a lot of different people. Keep an eye out for that. We can have a conversation about it 100%. Just do me a solid and don't bring up the charity aspect of your argument, because that can easily be debunked, because that's not actively doing anything for Star Wars, which is the whole point of the argument. It's a goalpost moving argument. So leave it at the door. I'm just letting you know right now that that's not going to fly. Anyway, the comments on this should be very interesting. The comments on this should be quite fascinating. If you are a subscriber who is part of the Fandom Menace and you choose to leave, I'm entirely fine with that one. I think that really what we find ourselves at is a crossroads. I think we find ourselves in a situation where you have competing groups. And I think that if you've completely worked for the last 2 years to narratively create something that is so negative and so toxic that people are actually afraid of wanting to talk positively about something because of how they're going to be attacked, that is actually something worth addressing within yourself. Because at what point are you doing something for the fandom, or you stop doing something for the fandom and you start just doing it strictly for yourself? Again, things to consider. And of course, I'll talk to you all later. Have yourself a great day, and peace out. This video is supported by patrons like you. If you'd like to become a patron, please head over to patreon.com/Matt Jarbo.